In May 2001, an archaeological team from the Baoji Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology was hard at work on Taiyuan Hill in the city's northern suburbs. Their goal was to conduct rescue excavations on a cluster of tombs dating to the late Tang and 5 dynasties period. To gain experience, the team decided to begin with Tomb No. 1, which was relatively small. Soon, at the end of the tomb passage, the team made an unexpected discovery, a tall, ornate, and extremely rare end gate. Modeled after the southern heavenly gate of the celestial realm, such a high-status structure appearing in a noblewoman's tomb suggested that Tomb No. 1 was far from ordinary. Then came another surprise. The end gate was not only beautiful, but also highly functional. It turned out to be a deadly trap designed to ensnare anyone attempting to enter the underground chamber. Will the next stage of excavating Tomb No. 1 bring danger? Could the tomb's owner be Lady Li Meozhen, who held the title of queen during her lifetime? If Tomb No. 1 is already this complex, does that mean the much larger Tomb No. 2 is also filled with hidden mechanisms? On May 5, 2001, the archaeological team unexpectedly discovered a 2-meter by 2-meter chamber behind the seemingly impenetrable end gate. This underground palace, designed to imitate the architecture of the living world, revealed a courtyard within a courtyard. Even in this small space, the team soon realized they had to slow down their excavation despite their best efforts. Determined to reach the underground palace as quickly as possible, the tunneling team worked at full capacity. But with little preparation for such a unique environment and only basic tools at hand, an accident even more dangerous than a collapse occurred in an instant. A windlass was fitted with a hook, which was then attached to a steel plate placed on top of a gasoline drum. During the hoisting process, just before reaching the top, the drum slipped from the hook and bounced downward. A gasoline drum of about 200 liters, filled with low S, weighs over 300 kilograms even when not completely full. Dropping such a massive object from more than 10 meters above could have caused unimaginable consequences if it had struck anyone below. One of her staff members narrowly avoided being hit. It grazed right past his shoulder. The shock brought tears to his eyes. The fear alone nearly overwhelmed him. By digging vertically down through the shaft behind the end gate, the team finally reached the first chamber of the underground palace, known as the antechamber. They believed they were the first people to enter the space in over 1,000 years until they noticed a collapsed stone door at the far end of the vestibule, which immediately raised concerns. The fallen stone gate consisted of 2 door panels, side columns, and a stone lintel, all carved from a single block of stone. After close inspection, the archaeologists were astonished to find that the 2 stone doors lying on the ground had no hinges. In other words, they were never meant to swing open. Instead, they were locked into the frame using a mortise and tenon structure. In ancient times, high-status tombs often featured heavy stone gates at the entrance of the passageway. After the burial, the gates were closed and wedge stones were lowered behind them. Once secured by the wedge stones, the gate could never be opened again. Similarly, in April 2001, when archaeologists in Hubei excavated the Ming Dynasty tomb of King Liangzhuang, they were stunned to find that the cinnabar-covered underground palace gate had mysteriously vanished. At first, people suspected tomb robbers, but it was later discovered that the strange situation was caused by a princess who died more than 10 years after King Liangzhuang and, on her deathbed, requested to be buried with him. Since the wedge stone had already been lowered, workers had no choice but to break open a stone door by force. Afterwards, they installed a wooden door, which eventually rotted away and disappeared. Unlike that wedge stone structure, the stone door in Tomb No, one of Linmen village, could not be opened once installed. So how then was the tomb owner's body placed inside? Naturally, attention turned to the outermost end gate. With its mortise and tenon inlay structure, this type of stone door cannot be opened unless it is smashed apart. And even if you step back to examine the entire doorway, the whole frame is embedded into the ground with soft stone, impossible to lift or pull out. Clearly, both the axle-less stone door and the end gate that collapses when 3 stones are removed were designed as anti-theft mechanisms. But while these features could block intruders, how was the tomb owner originally placed inside? The discovery of this inlaid door prompted researchers to rethink how the tomb's entrance was constructed. In hindsight, it seems likely that the body was placed inside first, followed by all the burial goods, and only then was the stone gate built into place. Once the stone gate was sealed in one go, the inner courtyard or the outer end gate would then be constructed. First the burial, then the sealing of the door. More than 1,000 years ago, after the burial ceremony for the owner of Tomb No, 1, craftsmen continued working underground at a depth of 15 meters for a long time all to prevent theft. Yet the stone door now lying on the ground clearly did not fall due to age, it was brought down by external force. This suggests that a group of skilled tomb robbers, possibly very familiar with the tomb's structure, had already entered the underground palace. After understanding why the stone gate had collapsed, the team members felt discouraged. But to team leader Liu Junch, although disheartening, the theft itself was not surprising. From an archaeologist's perspective, it was painful to see, but emotionally, his reaction differed from others. My work focuses on early period tombs, he explained. So seeing an early tomb damaged hits me harder. As for later period tombs, he added, there's a basic rule: any tomb with a mound was almost certainly robbed at some point in history. Even though the tomb had been looted, the cleanup still had to be carried out with full care and seriousness. Yet even in the vestibule area that should have been empty, the team made significant discoveries. The vestibule resembles the courtyard of a traditional home. Along the corridor walls on both sides, the team found numerous brick carvings with intricate patterns and rich artistic detail. At the top of the corridor walls, a row of painted blue bricks carved with mandarin ducks and peonies had been set in as decoration. Below them were 2 unusually colorful and striking brick-carved artworks. Brick carvings were common in the late Tang and the 5 Dynasties period, especially during the latter, when they became more widespread. But these 2 particular motifs, one showing 2 people carrying a sedan chair, and another showing 8 people carrying one, had never been seen in tombs from this era. Such imagery simply did not appear in tombs of this period before. The palanquin has a long history in China, with its earliest form dating back for 1,000 years to the Xia dynasty. As a symbol of feudal hierarchy, strict rules always governed how many people were permitted to carry a palanquin. By the Qing dynasty, only Beijing officials of the 3rd rank or above, or imperial envoys, were allowed to use an 8-bearer sedan chair when traveling outside the capital. Scholars have long said that no one had ever seen a clear depiction of what such a sedan chair actually looked like. This may well be the first authentic visual representation of an 8-bearer palanquin. Beyond filling gaps in historical records, these brick carvings are also remarkable works of art. The 8-bearer sedan chair seen on the west corridor wall is composed of 6 carved bricks. The bearers wore white-collared robes with red sashes tied around their waists. The lead bearer in the front row lifts the sedan chair with his right shoulder while holding his collar with his left hand, as if trying to cool himself in the heat. The last bearer in the back row gives a thumbs-up gesture as if offering praise. The entire set of carvings is exceptionally well-preserved, detailed, vivid, lively, and full of character. Seeing such a precious artifact unearthed before him, Liu Junshi, aware of his own technical limitations, immediately reached out to more experienced colleagues for help with preservation and color stabilization. The carvings contain multiple pigments and paints that require careful protection. In the end, conservation experts from the Qin Terracotta Warriors Museum were brought in, using the same materials and techniques employed to preserve the Terracotta Army, and they provided their assistance free of charge. Beyond the wall carvings, archaeologists also discovered floor tiles in the courtyard carved with lotus patterns. The craftsmanship is refined, and the designs appear remarkably lifelike. The most surprising discovery was that the area paved with lotus pattern tiles was actually on a slope. The tile designs clearly served as an anti-slip feature, showing that people in the Tang dynasty had already mastered many practical architectural techniques. In the otherwise empty courtyard, archaeologists also uncovered two side chambers. But after clearing them out, the team was left disappointed. These two chambers, located beside the end gate, were likely storerooms for vehicles and travel items belonging to the tomb's owner. Yet by the time of excavation, both chambers were completely empty, though two additional sets of brick carvings were found at their entrances. These carvings depict Han people leading horses and Hu people leading camels. The depiction of Hu people leading camels further supported the theory that the tomb belonged to Li Miuzhen and his wife. The image of Hu people with camels is one of the clearest pieces of evidence of cultural exchange with the West along the Silk Road. In Tang-era tombs, Tang Sankai figurines were used to portray scenes from daily life. By the Five Dynasties period, such depictions were instead expressed through brick carvings. Although no grave goods were found in the vestibule or the side chambers, the discovery of these valuable brick carvings made up for the loss to a large extent. From an archaeological perspective, this collection, especially the earlier set of carvings, already represents a significant 30% of the tomb's cultural value. Normally, archaeologists would begin by making rubbings of the carvings to record their details. But no one had the heart to press paper against these fragile pieces. Instead, they chose to remove them intact for preservation. After finishing work in the vestibule, the team continued excavating deeper inside. Near the collapsed stone gate, they unexpectedly found many shiny objects buried in the silt. Once cleaned, the items turned out to be gold-plated copper studs and decorative corner fittings from a doorway. Passing through the collapsed wooden door, the team officially entered the underground palace, but they soon encountered a massive blockage of silt. The silt was layered, each layer more compact than the last. Only a small space near the top of the arched ceiling remained open. The rest was completely filled. In a corridor 3.3 meters wide and 3.8 meters high, the stratified silt had piled almost to the ceiling, sealing off the tomb like a solid wall. But why was there so much silt inside the passageway? If the mud had come from natural seepage, it would have been thin and watery, leaving only a small amount of sediment. 1 or 2 centimeters of silt would be normal after 1,000 years. But with such a thick accumulation, there was only one explanation. Somewhere deeper inside the underground palace, there must be a robber's tunnel that the archaeologists had not yet discovered. Based on their analysis of the vestibule, the archaeological team realized that the tomb robbers had most likely entered through a hidden tunnel deep within the underground palace and then broken the stone door from the inside to reach the vestibule. If that was true, the outlook for Tomb No. 1 was deeply concerning. Ever since excavations began in Cemetery Village, one key question had remained unanswered: the true identity of the tomb's owner. Tomb No. 2 had been labeled Lee Myojen's tomb in 1980 solely based on villagers' recollections. Now that the tomb had been completely disturbed, could the owner's identity still be confirmed? On May 17, 2001, just after clearing the silt from the corridor and entering the front chamber of the underground palace, the team accidentally discovered a stone epitaph box. An epitaph is a stone inscription placed in a tomb that records the life and deeds of the deceased. The newly discovered epitaph was large, 98 centimeters long, 91 centimeters wide, and 38 centimeters thick. It was called a box because it consisted of two tightly fitted parts, a lid and a base, still firmly sealed when unearthed. When the epitaph was opened, the seal script on the lid read, "Epitaph of the late Lady of Qin, Xian." Examining the inscription carefully, the team found information about the tomb owner's identity. The lady's surname was Liu, and she came from Pengcheng. In the 3rd year of Tianfu, she was granted the title Lady of Qin. In the 5th year, she was elevated to the title Virtuous Lady of Qin. Tianfu was the reign title of Shi Jingting, founder of the later Jin dynasty. This indicates that the tomb belonged to a noblewoman surnamed Liu, originally from Baoji. She received her titles during the later Jin period, later than the eras of later Liang and later Tang. By then, her husband had already passed away, and the title of King of Qin had been inherited by their son. This aligns with historical records showing that Li Myojen died of illness in 924 AD during the later Tang dynasty. However, it was puzzling that in an epitaph nearly 1 square meter in size, containing 1,691 characters, not a single word mentioned Li Myojen or Song Wentong. Could the assumption that the tomb belonged to Lady Li Myojen be wrong after all? At that moment, another line of text on the epitaph drew everyone's attention. The late Commander Kong Yin of the Zhongwu Army, former Binzhou Marshal Kong Xiao, and former Fengxiang Palace Commander Ji Yan were all her sons. These positions, Zhongwu Army Commander, Binzhou Marshal, and Fengxiang Palace Commander, were all high-ranking official posts. Historical records confirm that Li Kongji, Li Kongzhao, and Li Jiyan, who held these titles, were all descendants of Li Myojen. With this, the truth finally became clear. Yet one mystery remained. Why was Li Myojen himself king of Qin and founder of the Li family's legacy never mentioned in the epitaph at all? Although the epitaph finally confirmed the identity of the tomb's owner, the greatest discovery was not the inscription itself. For a tomb of this scale, finding an epitaph was expected. What no one anticipated was the presence of a stone box placed right in front of it. Buried in the silt beside the epitaph, a beautifully crafted stone box was unearthed 35 centimeters tall, 47 centimeters long, and 34.5 centimeters wide, complete with a base and lid and decorated with intricate designs. A preliminary inspection showed that the box was tightly sealed. With such a heavy and well-constructed container, it was almost certain that something important had been stored inside. To protect whatever relics it might contain, the team agreed not to open the box on site. Seeing such an exquisite stone box exposed to the light, one could only regard it as a treasure, its contents left entirely to the imagination. The front chamber where the epitaph and stone box were found was tall and spacious. It measured 8.6 meters long, 4.3 meters wide, and up to 5 meters high, with 2 side chambers on either side. Unfortunately, despite its size, the team found nothing significant in this chamber. After clearing a 6-meter corridor leading from the front chamber, the archaeologists finally entered a domed burial chamber. Looking up, they immediately saw a robber's tunnel in the ceiling, an ominous sign that little might remain inside. The chamber measured 5.4 meters in both length and width, with a 4-cornered dome rising exactly 5.4 meters above the floor. This space, later named the back chamber, had an entrance to the south and additional side chambers connected by corridors to the east, west, and north. Judging from the robber's tunnel and the layers of silt, the tomb had likely been looted not long after it was built, perhaps during later periods of war. After much of the Li family's power had collapsed, individuals familiar with the tomb's layout participated in the theft. Earlier cleaning revealed several niches built into the chamber, yet none of these niches contained any grave goods, even though their number suggested they were meant to hold offerings. Otherwise, why construct so many compartments only to leave them empty? It would make no sense. Across the vestibule, front chamber, and back chamber, there were 7 side chambers in total, along with 17 niches about 1 meter high set into the back corridor and back chamber. These spaces would originally have been filled with grave goods of various types. At the very least, there should have been ceramics or figurines, but none of these items remained. Nothing at all was found. So far, aside from numerous small bronze fragments and a single silver piece associated with larger artifacts, the most significant finds have been the brick carvings and stone statues uncovered in the front courtyard and back corridor. But who managed to enter the back chamber so precisely through the robber's tunnel and even avoid the deadly trap of the Duanmen Gate? How did they know there was a side chamber in the vestibule, prompting them to break the stone door from the inside out? It's possible they didn't take everything at once. While clearing the robber's tunnel, the team noticed that its walls were unusually smooth and uniform, suggesting it had been used repeatedly over time. It seems likely that the robbers returned again and again, taking items little by little. This suggests the robbers probably lived near the tombs or were even the craftsmen who built them or their descendants. After finishing Tomb No. 1, the original plan was not to excavate Li Meozhen's tomb, which lay to the east. Since the smaller Tomb No. 1 had already been looted, Liu Junch feared that the larger, more prominent Tomb No. 2 would be in even worse condition. Tomb No. 1 needed to be restored and reinforced, and the museum construction was to proceed as planned. As for when Tomb No. 2 would be excavated, the idea was to wait until the museum was completed, then open the site for excavation at any time, following the principles of public archaeology. Still, the magnificent end gate of Tomb No. 1, its complex structure, and the remarkable brick carvings and stone statues stirred great curiosity. Everyone wanted to see what the grander Tomb No. 2 believed to belong to Li Meozhen himself might look like. With public anticipation growing, the excavation of Tomb No soon began. After a 10-day break following the completion of Tomb No, work on Tomb No commenced. The team immediately sensed that Tomb No was larger, judging by the scale of its mound. With the lessons learned from Tomb No, the excavation of Tomb No proceeded more smoothly. As before, they began by clearing the tomb passage, and the first structure they encountered was a pebble-covered gate. But to everyone's surprise, Tomb No was not more elaborate than Tomb No 1. Behind the pebble gate stood a stone door with beams and columns, but the design was much simpler. There was far less silt underground, nowhere near the thick accumulation found in Tomb No 1. The shallow layer of silt was only about 1 meter deep, and the first thing they saw was a robber's tunnel, this one blasted open with explosives. Aluminum can impressions and even a helmet were found nearby. Judging from the condition of the tomb, it seems not only the archaeologists arrived too late, even modern tomb robbers who blasted their way and likely found nothing. Unlike Tomb No 1, the silt here had barely shifted. What silt remained showed signs of disturbance. The stone vault structure, however, was still largely intact. Aside from the wooden doors, the internal layout of Tomb No was extremely simple. Beyond a corridor measuring 5.4 meters deep and 2.8 meters wide, the tomb contained only a single burial chamber, 9.2 meters deep and 3.2 meters wide. In the northeast corner of the burial chamber floor, there was also an early robber's tunnel. After cleaning, the only significant find was a square epitaph 84 centimeters per side and 36 centimeters tall, confirming that the tomb did indeed belong to Li Meozhen. Nothing else remained. Faced with such emptiness, many people could hardly believe what they were seeing. Some even wondered whether the tomb was fake. But there's an epitaph, someone pointed out. An epitaph that could be misleading too, another replied. They pried up several bricks from the tomb floor and dug deeper, only to find another 7 meters of the same burned, compacted soil. In the end, the hidden tomb chamber people imagined simply wasn't there. But where did this deep layer of burned earth come from? These signs had misled archaeologists during the early surveys. Drilling results and initial excavation showed that while the original pit dug for the tomb was enormous, the actual stone chamber built inside it was very small. Nearly half the pit, about 7 meters, had been backfilled, then topped with a stone vault, with more burned earth packed around it. The pit was dug on a grand scale, but the final tomb constructed inside was surprisingly small. Why would such a strange large pit, small tomb phenomenon occur? Liu Junch considered several possibilities. It remained a puzzling mystery. One theory was that the tomb owner died unexpectedly. Perhaps he had been healthy and had not planned his burial in advance. After his sudden death, the tomb had to be built in a hurry. Workers may have initially intended to construct a grand tomb befitting his status, but for unknown reasons ended up building a much smaller chamber and sealing it quickly. However, historical records show that Li Meozhen did not die suddenly in battle or from an unexpected illness. Another possibility is that by the time Li Meozhen died, his territory was already in decline and his financial resources may have dwindled as well. This speculation contradicts the fact recorded in the epitaph from Tomb No, one that Li Meozhen died during the later Tang dynasty, and that the later Jin emperor still granted titles to his wife. Another theory, half in jest, asks, whom did the son love more, his mother or his father? Mrs. Li Meozhen's tomb was built with care because her son already held considerable power and did things properly. This seemingly illogical third theory is, in fact, not surprising at all. In the imperial households of feudal society, Father-son affection was often overshadowed entirely by the pursuit of power. Perhaps there were untold stories between Li Meozhen and his heirs. With the excavation of Tomb No to nearing completion, the mystery of the cemetery village tombs finally had a complete answer. What concerned everyone most now was the exquisite stone box unearthed from Tomb No. 1. Near the end of the excavation, the team attempted to open the stone box for the first time. As soon as they opened it slightly, they noticed a substance inside that corroded easily when exposed to air. They saw part of an iron plate already visible, along with something red like cinnabar sand. Once they realized this, they stopped immediately. The stone box was then transported under escort to the Xi'an Cultural Relics Protection and Restoration Center for a professional CT scan. The scan results were puzzling. The box was taken to the laboratory to be opened only under controlled conditions. The iron plate inside showed a slight curvature. Without digging further, it became clear the box contained only an iron plate, wedged between two stone slabs. After more than 1,000 years, the iron plate had rusted, and the cinnabar inscriptions once written on it had become unreadable.
这个失望自己太失望了。
This unusual iron plate led to speculation. Could it be the legendary Danju iron certificate mentioned in historical texts? A Danju iron certificate was essentially a death exemption token. When princes or ministers rendered great service, the emperor might grant their family such a token, allowing their descendants to be spared execution even if they committed a crime. However, no historical record states that Li Meozhen or his family ever received such a certificate, so whether this iron plate is one remains a mystery. More than 1,000 years ago, the brilliance of the Tang dynasty was ultimately undone by warlord factions like Li Meozhen. Decades later, Li Meozhen, the king of Qin, and his queenly wife were themselves looted amid the chaos of their era. Today, people continue striving to uncover the truth of history.